The first thing Maya saw at her father's 60th birthday party was her own name. Except it wasn't really her name. Pinned neatly to the front of her dress was a white card that read, "The Disappointment." For a moment she stood completely still, convinced there had to be some explanation. Then she looked across the garden and saw Ray laughing with his friends, champagne glass raised, watching her reaction. Lena stood beside him trying not to laugh. "Seriously?" Maya asked. Lena shrugged. "Dad said everyone needed a little humor tonight." Several guests glanced over. Someone chuckled. Ray approached with the relaxed smile of a man enjoying a private joke. "Don't take it personally. You had this printed?" "Of course." He looked at the card as though admiring the craftsmanship. "You know, Maya, everyone expected different things from you." He nodded toward Lena. "She stayed, worked hard, helped build the business. You spent years trying to figure yourself out." More laughter followed. Maya removed the card and placed it on the gift table. She could have argued, but something caught her attention. Beneath the insult was a tiny line of text. "Guess 17, Maya." He stared at it. The card matched every other professionally printed name tag on the table. This wasn't a joke invented 5 minutes ago. Someone had planned it. Ray lifted his glass behind her. "To family," he announced, "even the difficult parts." The guests laughed. Maya quietly took out her phone and photographed the card. Maya stayed through dinner, though every laugh seemed louder than it needed to be. She sat near the end of the table watching Ray move from guest to guest, accepting compliments about the company as if he had built it alone. The house looked almost exactly as she remembered it. Wide glass doors opening onto the garden, polished stone beneath their feet, family photographs arranged along the walls. Only the people had changed. Most of tonight's guests were connected to Ray's building supply business. Halfway through dinner, Ray tapped his glass. "You know what I love about birthdays?" he said. "They give you a chance to look at what you've built." His gaze settled briefly on Maya. Then he began telling stories. He described the time Maya questioned an expansion deal, making it sound as though she had nearly destroyed the company. Lena joined in, laughing as she remembered how dramatic Maya had been. Maya set down her fork. "I didn't question the expansion," she said calmly. "I questioned where the money was going." The table quieted for a second. Ray smiled. "Exactly. Always suspicious. I found payments moving between 2 company accounts. And the company survived. Because you stopped the transaction." Ray leaned back. "See? She remembers everything." A few people laughed again. Maya said nothing. 4 years earlier she had discovered unexplained transfers while working inside the company. The invoices didn't match the amounts leaving the accounts, and several payments had gone through businesses she couldn't identify. She had taken the records to Ray. His response had been immediate. "Stay out of it." She left the company soon afterward. What Ray didn't know was that Maya had never thrown those records away. She now worked independently as a financial compliance consultant, reviewing the same kinds of irregularities for other businesses. She had learned that numbers rarely lied. People simply became creative about explaining them. A waiter brought the birthday cake. Ray stood and accepted another round of applause. "The company is finally worth real money," he announced. Lena smiled proudly. Maya watched her father cut the cake and felt something shift. Earlier that week, an old company accountant named Evan had contacted her unexpectedly. He had asked whether she still possessed copies of the records from her final months at the company. He had asked why. Evan had hesitated before answering. "Because the same kind of payments are happening again." Now Ray was talking about the company's value, Lena's role, and an upcoming expansion. Maya looked around the table. Nobody seemed worried. Then Ray mentioned that the business would soon undergo a major restructuring. Maya's attention sharpened. He didn't explain what that meant. He didn't need to. Evan's warning suddenly sounded much less like an old accounting problem and much more like a reason someone had wanted Maya humiliated before she started asking questions. Ray announced the next surprise just after the cake was served. A framed document was carried into the room and placed beside the fireplace, where everyone could see it. 30 years of work, Ray said proudly. The document showed an estimated value of the company, followed by the names of the people expected to inherit it. Lena's name appeared in large letters. Maya's was missing. Ray looked toward her. "Well," he said with a grin, Some people inherit what they build. Others spend their lives looking for something to build. The room filled with awkward laughter. Maya pushed back her chair. I need some air. She walked through the house, past photographs of Ray receiving awards and shaking hands with business partners, then stepped outside. Nobody followed her. At her car, she opened the envelope Evan had given her earlier that week. The first documents were old company filings. Then came payment records, ownership statements, and copies of agreements Maya had never seen. She stopped when she reached a private agreement dated 6 months after her mother's death. Her eyes moved across the page. Rose had owned a significant minority share of Ray's company. Maya read the next paragraph twice. After Rose died, her interest had been placed into a trust benefiting both daughters. Both. Maya leaned against the car. Ray had told her there was nothing substantial left from her mother's business interests. He had said Rose's finances were complicated and that everything had eventually gone toward keeping the company alive. Maya turned another page. Ray had signed the agreement. So had Lena. Her hands tightened around the paper. She immediately opened the corporate records on her phone and searched for the trust. It still existed. Then she found recent filings showing that company assets had been moved into a newly created entity controlled by Lena. Her stomach dropped. The birthday suddenly looked different. The name tag. The jokes. The framed inheritance document. Ray's repeated insistence that Lena had earned everything while Maya had contributed nothing. It wasn't simply cruelty. It was preparation. Her phone rang. Evan. Maya answered. Tell me you found something, he said. I found a trust. There was a pause. You found it. It was never dissolved. Evan exhaled slowly. Then you need to look at the sale documents. What sale? The division Ray has been talking about selling. Maya looked back toward the glowing windows of the house. How soon? Less than 2 weeks. She stared at the framed document visible through the glass. For the first time that evening, she understood why Ray had needed everyone laughing before she started asking questions. Maya left the birthday party without saying goodbye. Instead of driving home, she followed Evan's directions to a small diner across town, where he was already waiting in a booth near the window. He slid a thick folder across the table. I kept copies because I knew someone might eventually need them. Maya opened it. Inside were invoices, account statements, internal emails, and meeting records from the years after Rose died. Why didn't you give me these before? Evan looked down at his coffee. You weren't ready to believe what they showed. I am now. They went through the records together. Rose had invested heavily when the company was still struggling. She had personally guaranteed early loans and held shares that were supposed to pass into the trust after her death. Instead, Ray gradually shifted money and assets between companies connected to him and Lena. Maya traced each transaction with her finger. This one. Management fee. And this. Consulting. For what? Evan shook his head. That's the problem. There isn't much evidence any work was done. Maya turned another page. Then she saw an email from Lena. The message was brief. Maya is the only person who could cause trouble if she ever understood the trust. Maya stared at the screen. I was supposed to be kept ignorant. Evan didn't answer. She closed the folder and drove home. Rose's old belongings were still stored in boxes beneath the stairs. Maya carried them into the living room and opened them one by one. Receipts, photographs, letters, old bank statements. Nothing. Then she found a birthday card. The paper had yellowed around the edges. Rose's handwriting covered the inside. Maya read the message silently. Keep copies of anything you sign. She remembered her mother's habit of keeping duplicate documents in separate places. At the time, Maya had thought it was simply caution. Now it felt deliberate. The following afternoon she sat across from Sarah, a lawyer Evan recommended. Sarah listened without interrupting while Maya explained everything. When she finished, Sarah opened the folder and examined the trust agreement. This was never properly accounted for. What does that mean? It means we need the records Ray should have provided you. Maya leaned forward. Can he say I gave up my rights? He can say anything. Sarah looked directly at her. Our job is to determine whether he can prove it. Maya handed her the documents. Sarah turned each page carefully. After several minutes she asked, Do you remember signing anything related to your mother's trust? No. Anything giving up your interest in the company? I signed employment paperwork when I worked there. Do you have copies? Maya nodded. Sarah closed the folder. Then bring every piece of paper you have. Don't throw anything away. Don't contact your father about this yet. Maya reached for her bag. I won't. Sarah stopped her. And Maya? Yes. If your family has spent years telling you that you have no rights, that doesn't make it true. Sarah spread Maya's documents across the conference table, arranging them by date. She worked without rushing, comparing signatures, payment records, trust statements, and corporate filings. After nearly an hour, she pulled one document toward Maya. This is the important one. Maya recognized the company letterhead immediately. I've never seen that version. Sarah pointed to the final page. It says you surrendered any future claim against the company. Maya frowned. I didn't sign that. You signed something when you worked there? Yes. An employment agreement. Salary, benefits, responsibilities. Nothing like this. Sarah placed the document beside it. The signature looks similar. Maya stared at the page. It is similar. But I don't remember signing it. Sarah turned to the date. This was executed 3 weeks after you left. Maya looked up. I wasn't even working there. Where were you? At the consulting firm I joined afterward. Can you prove it? My employment records. Emails. Timesheets. Sarah nodded. Good. She photographed the document and placed it inside a clear sleeve. Don't touch the original again. That evening Maya's phone rang. She let it ring twice before answering. You've been busy, he said. I've had things to look at. You could have come to me. I did. 4 years ago. Silence. Ray's voice softened. Maya, whatever you've heard, this can be handled inside the family. What exactly can be handled? You know what I mean. I don't. He sighed. I can transfer some money to you. Enough to put this behind us. Maya leaned against the kitchen counter. How much? He named a figure. It was more money than Ray had ever offered her. Why? Because you're my daughter. That doesn't answer the question. You're making this uglier than it needs to be. Maya looked at the documents on the table. Then explained the agreement. Another silence. What agreement? The one saying I surrendered my rights. Ray's breathing changed. You've been talking to someone. I've been reading. Maya, you're misunderstanding old paperwork. Then explain why it was signed after I left. Ray's tone hardened. You always do this. You find one thing you don't understand and turn it into an accusation. I'm not accusing you. Then stop acting like a prosecutor. He ended the call. Maya stood quietly for several seconds before Sarah called. I sent the document for forensic review, Sarah said. Don't confront Ray again. What do you think? I think someone needs to explain how your signature appeared on a document dated after you left. Maya looked at the phone. That's what I want to know. Sarah's answer came quietly. And I think we're getting close. Ray's invitation arrived 2 days later, printed on heavy cream paper and delivered by courier. He wanted the family together at the company headquarters. The message promised a private discussion and a chance to settle the misunderstanding. Sarah read it twice. Go, she said. Maya looked at her. That's your advice? Listen. Don't argue. Don't sign anything. The headquarters occupied a renovated warehouse downtown. Maya had worked there years earlier, but the place felt unfamiliar now. New furniture filled the reception area, and photographs of Ray and Lena covered the walls. Ray was waiting inside the conference room with Lena beside him. A folder sat on the table. Ray gestured toward a chair. Sit. Maya remained standing. You said you wanted to settle this. I do. He opened the folder and pushed a document across the table. A settlement. Maya picked it up. The amount made her pause. It was substantial enough to tempt almost anyone. She continued reading. The agreement released every possible claim Maya might have against the company, Ray, Lena, and several related businesses. Then she reached a paragraph concerning Rose's estate. She looked up. Why does this mention my mother's estate? Ray shrugged. Standard language. For what? To make sure everything is finished. Sarah had warned her about broad releases. Maya turned another page. This doesn't just settle a business dispute. Ray's expression tightened. You're overthinking it. Lena folded her arms. You wanted money, didn't you? Maya looked at her. I wanted the truth. Lena laughed bitterly. You always say things like that when you don't get your way. Maya returned her attention to Ray. If I'm so wrong about everything, why are you offering me this much? Nobody answered. Ray finally leaned back. Because you're family. That's not an answer either. His jaw tightened. You have until Friday. Maya placed the agreement back on the table. I'll need Sarah to review it. Ray's smile disappeared. Of course you will. She turned toward the door. On the hallway wall hung a large photograph of Rose standing beside Ray during the company's earliest years. Maya stopped. Beneath it was a brass plaque. Rose, founding partner. She read it twice. Founding partner? Lena looked away. Maya took out her phone and photographed the plaque. Ray's voice came from behind her. Don't start inventing another story. Maya lowered the phone. I don't have to invent anything. She looked again at Rose's photograph. For years, you told me she only helped with bookkeeping. Ray said nothing. Maya walked toward the elevator. Behind her, Lena finally spoke. Dad. The elevator doors opened. Maya stepped inside. As the doors began closing, she saw Ray staring at the photograph instead of at her. Maya placed the photograph of Rose's plaque on Sarah's desk. Founding partner, Sarah read aloud. That's significant. It wasn't the story I grew up with. Sarah opened the latest records Evan had collected. The documents showed Rose had invested money when Ray's company was barely operating, personally guaranteed loans, and held shares that should have passed into the trust after her death. Sarah tapped the pages. This confirms your mother's ownership. Maya looked at the figures. And the trust. Still active. They kept going. Several large payments had left the company and gone to a consulting firm owned by Ray's longtime friend. The descriptions claimed the money covered management services, but there were almost no records showing what work had actually been performed. Maya frowned. Where did the money go afterward? Sarah turned another page. Here. The consulting firm's account had transferred substantial amounts into a company controlled by Lena. Maya leaned back. So they moved it around. We can't say that yet. But the money ended up with Lena. Yes. Sarah closed the file. We need stronger evidence. That evening Maya called Evan. Where did you keep the old records? Some were never digitized. Where? The warehouse. There was a storage room behind my old office. Maya drove there that afternoon. Evan met her near the loading entrance and led her through a narrow corridor lined with shelves. Boxes covered the floor. Most of this hasn't been touched in years, he said. Maya pulled on a pair of gloves. They searched through invoices, meeting notes, payroll records, and old correspondence. Dust clung to the cardboard edges. Then Maya found a folder marked with a date. She opened it. Inside were meeting minutes. 3 days before the disputed agreement supposedly carried her signature, Ray, Lena, and the company accountant had attended a private meeting. Maya read the first page, then the second. Her eyes stopped at one sentence. Discussion regarding removal of Maya from future participation in company affairs. He turned to Evan. This meeting happened before the agreement. He nodded slowly. Maya continued reading. Another line stated that her continued involvement could create complications regarding Rose's trust. She photographed every page. Then she found a handwritten note attached to the minutes. Proceed before she asks questions. Maya stared at it. Evan broke the silence. They knew. They planned it. She closed the folder carefully. The birthday card, the name tag, the settlement agreement, the missing inheritance. All of it now connected to something much older. Maya slipped the minutes into a protective sleeve. They didn't suddenly decide I was a problem. Evan shook his head. No. Maya looked down at the document. They've been preparing for me to find out. Sarah filed the legal notices before Ray could complete the proposed sale. The company was now required to account for the trust, the disputed transfers, and Maya's alleged surrender of her rights. Ray's attorneys responded within hours. Their letter accused Maya of abandoning the business years earlier and voluntarily giving up any interest she might once have held. Sarah placed the letter in front of Maya. They're relying heavily on this agreement. The forged one. Allegedly forged, Sarah corrected. We let the evidence speak. She submitted the agreement for forensic examination along with Maya's employment records, the trust documents, corporate filings, financial transfers, and the meeting minutes from the warehouse. A week later, the situation changed. The forensic examiner found inconsistencies in the disputed signature and confirmed that the document's creation history did not match the date printed on it. Sarah called Maya. They can't explain how you supposedly signed it after you had already left. Maya sat silently. Then her phone buzzed. Lena, can we meet? Alone. They met at a quiet cafe near the office. Lena arrived first. She looked exhausted. I knew about the trust, she said before Maya could speak. Maya sat down. How long? Years. And you said nothing. Lena looked away. Dad told me you'd already received your share. You believed him? I wanted to. Maya studied her. That isn't the same thing. Lena's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. I was scared. Of me. Of him. The answer caught Maya off guard. Lena lowered her voice. Dad said if you ever came back asking questions you'd destroy the company. He said you'd blame me and then everything we'd built would disappear. Maya almost laughed. You were protecting yourself. Yes. While he was using you. Lena didn't argue. After a long silence, she reached into her bag and removed her phone. He sent me messages. She opened a conversation. Ray had instructed her to make sure Maya felt unwelcome at the birthday party. One message specifically mentioned the name tag. Make sure she understands everyone knows what she is. Maya read it twice. He ordered it. Lena nodded. He wanted people laughing before the legal issue became public. Maya handed the phone back. Why show me this now? Because I don't know how to fix what I've helped create. Maya looked at her sister for several seconds. You can't fix it. Lena's eyes dropped. But you can tell the truth. Lena nodded. I will. She forwarded the messages before leaving. Maya watched the evidence arrive on her phone one file at a time. For the first time, the insult from the birthday party wasn't merely a humiliation. It was evidence of intent. The company sale was suspended while the independent review examined the trust, the disputed agreement and the transfers involving Lena's businesses. Ray's attorneys could no longer dismiss Maya's claims as a family argument. There were too many documents, too many dates and too many transactions requiring explanations. The forensic report arrived first. Sarah placed it on the table. The signature wasn't created when the agreement says it was. Maya read the conclusion carefully. So I didn't sign it. Correct. And the trust. The review confirms it remained active. Maya let out a slow breath. For years, Ray had spoken as though the matter had been settled before she was old enough to understand it. Now the paperwork showed something else. The financial investigators examined the payments next. Some expenses were legitimate and properly documented. Others were poorly supported. Several transfers from the company to Ray's friend's consulting firm eventually reached entities controlled by Lena. When questioned, Ray claimed the payments represented legitimate management arrangements. The investigators asked for contracts, invoices, work records, and approvals. Several could not be produced. Lena surrendered additional records after agreeing to cooperate. One afternoon, Maya sat across from Sarah as she reviewed the final settlement proposal. They're offering repayment into the trust, Sarah said. They'll also cover your legal expenses. How much? Sarah gave her the figure. Maya looked at the page without smiling. Does this include the disputed agreement? Yes. There's a separate payment connected to that issue. And Lena? She has to return certain assets transferred to her controlled entities. Maya closed the folder. What happens if I reject it? We continue. And if I accept? The trust gets funded, the improper transfers are addressed, and the sale can proceed under new conditions. Maya looked through the conference room window. She could still remember Ray's voice at the birthday party, laughing while everyone watched her. She had imagined confronting him with anger. Instead she found herself tired. I don't want him ruined. Sarah looked up. Are you sure? I want the records corrected. I want what belonged to my mother restored. That's enough. Sarah nodded. The agreement was signed after several final changes. Ray signed first. His signature looked smaller than Maya remembered. When the documents reached her, she read every page before picking up the pen. Ray avoided her eyes. Afterward he spoke quietly. Was this what you wanted? Maya placed the pen on the table. No. He looked at her. I wanted you to tell the truth before I had to prove it. Ray said nothing. Maya gathered her copy and stood. Outside the building she stopped beside the pavement and looked back at the headquarters. The company was still standing. So was she. But neither belonged to the story Ray had spent years telling. Maya attended a small family gathering at a restaurant across town. There were no banners, no speeches, and no white cards waiting to embarrass anyone. Ray had chosen the place because he no longer hosted large events at the house. The company had been restructured. The trust had been properly funded, the disputed transfers resolved, and the money owed to Maya had been returned. She had no interest in taking a position inside the business again. Instead, she and Evan opened a small compliance firm together. Their first office was modest. 2 desks, a printer that jammed whenever they were in a hurry, and a window overlooking a busy street. Maya preferred it that way. Lena remained distant. They spoke occasionally, carefully avoiding promises about becoming close again. Some damage didn't disappear simply because the paperwork had been corrected. Ray's messages became less frequent. One afternoon, Maya received a short text from him. Did you receive the final trust statement? She stared at it before replying. Yes. Nothing followed. That evening, while clearing an old drawer at home, Maya found the photograph she had taken at the birthday party. The white name tag filled the screen. The disappointment. She almost deleted the picture. Instead she saved it with the legal documents. Not because she wanted to relive that night. Because the photograph captured the moment everything changed. Ray had wanted the room to laugh at her before anyone questioned his version of the family. He had expected humiliation to make her smaller. Instead it had made her look closer. The next week Maya met a new client at the office. He introduced himself nervously and explained that his family-owned company had no proper financial controls. Maya listened, then opened a notebook. Start with every account, she said. Nothing gets ignored because someone says it's a family matter. The man nodded. What's your name? Maya. And your role? She looked at the papers in front of her. Financial compliance. There was no joke attached to it. No audience waiting to laugh. No relative deciding what the word meant. Just her name and the work she had chosen. For years her family had tried to define her with a single word. Now when someone asked who she was, Maya didn't need their approval to answer.